Hello and welcome everyone. This is Tamal Mukherjee on behalf of Literoma. As you all know that for our YouTube channel every week, we generally bring one celebrity or the other. And today we are absolutely privileged to have the prolific crime fiction writer, Jaya Lahiri Mukherjee. And she's here with us. As you already know, she is a well-known microbiologist turned into a crime fiction writer. And I want to start the interview. I don't want to keep it as an interview. Rather, let's keep it as a candid coffee chat. As I can see, ma'am already sipping uh, coffee from her mug. So I want to start off with that. This is very interesting, ma'am, that someone like you who started her career as an academician into purely into microbiology, then getting into the crime fiction writing. This is very interesting. If you can tell us more about your journey, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Tamal, for having me here. That is a very interesting question, even for me, because all my activities have kind of flowed along with the tide, as one would say. I started off as a molecular biologist, doing a PhD at Oregon Health Sciences University in Oregon, Portland, and then came back to India to work at National Institute of Immunology and the TIFR. From there, I dropped science completely because, you see, my science kept me away from my husband. We were either in different continents or different countries or different cities. That's no way to have a married life. So I preferred to give up science and join my husband and start a family. While that was happening, in the meanwhile, I started doing things which would keep me occupied. You see, because once a professional, it's very difficult to sit back and do nothing. So I went back, I started doing CAD-CAM, animation making, etc., animation filmmaking. And then when our daughter came along, she basically dictated my life. There's no other way of putting it. So for the first 8 years of my daughter's life, I was a single parent. And if you know how tough being a single parent is, then you'll understand that I needed to keep myself occupied elsewhere too. And along with producing children's plays and public speaking, the natural thing was telling stories for a mother. So one of the stories, the initiation of my writing is quite interesting because as all children, they prefer someone else's mother to be their own. So my daughter said, I want so-and-so auntie. We wish so-and-so auntie was my mother. And I said, yeah, fair enough. And I told her a story called The Nice Mama. My husband, who was at that time on leave, came home. He was at home. He heard the story and he said, why don't you write it? So I wrote that story and it got published in one of the local papers here. And from that, my journey in writing started. So I used to write initially for local papers and magazines in Pune. Then when we traveled abroad, I wrote for the papers wherever I was, either in Oman or in the US. And when my husband retired and we came home and my daughter was on her own, I had the time to indulge in stuff I really wanted to do. And one of them is writing books. Crime fiction happened because it wasn't really a choice. It so happened that the Pune International Literary Festival has a manuscript competition. And they had put out the word that the best crime manuscript would be taken and published. Well, that's what happened. And Out Through the Web was published. And from there, my writing as a crime author began.
That's pretty interesting, ma'am, and also inspiring as well. So as we know that you had published 4 books so far, rather you had authored 4 books so far. I know that the 4th book actually was launched in one of our events conducted by Literoma on 18th of December last year. I'll come to that 4th book. Before that, I'd like to know about the first 3 books of yours. So we understand it caters around a sleuth named Ravi Kumar. And in most of the cases, we had seen that generally the detectives or the investigators are private detectives. In your case, there is a striking difference. So why don't you tell a few words about Ravi Kumar and the first 3 books precisely?
Tamal, I've spent a large chunk of my life outside India. And one of the things I have realized that in India, we don't have private detectives. They're not legal. They're not official. And if I want to write a story, a crime story, which is credible, then the start should also be credible. The hero must be credible. It has to be someone who's listened to, who can do. It has to be someone who's official. So it's either the police or CIA or, sorry, not CIA, beg your pardon, CBI or any of the other CID, whatever. So that is why I have a police officer as my main sleuth. If private detectives do become legal, I would love to make him retire and become one. But till then, he remains Pune police. And plus, I live in Pune. And I don't know if you follow the news, but our Pune crime branch is very, very effective. It does solve a lot of the crime quite fast. I'm quite enamored of them, really, to tell you the truth, quite impressed and enamored. So it was obvious choice that I would go with Pune police crime officer.
Absolutely. That's great. Why don't you tell us the synopsis of the first 3 books of yours?
To begin with, let me make a point here. I'm nowhere like J.K. Rowling, who creates crime out of the blue. My crimes really are reflective on life. They may or may not be real crimes. They could be an incident which I think has the scope of being a crime, but it's not something that I think up out of the blue, out of nothing. So like I said, while I was busy being a mother and wife, I used to have these ideas that I used to pick up from the papers and put them into my computer in one line. This is what I want to write. With Out Flew the Web, which was submitted at PILF, that was the first one. It was about, and they're usually, just to digress again, my crimes, I don't particularly care for blood and gore. So I don't particularly want killing and splashing of blood and clawing out and making all that. Poison seems nice. The Out Through the Web was the first book that was published, but frankly, for me, the crime wasn't as gripping as it should have been. So I recently redid the first book as a second edition. So although this is the cover of the book that is still available, as of next week or so, the second edition will be available, which in my opinion is a lot more mysterious and it's interesting. The second book is actually a spin-off of the first one, which is The Fingers Speak. Because in my first book, there are actually 3 or 4 murders that I talk about that are required to solve the main murder. And one of those murders I have picked up and made the second book. The first one is in Pune, where I live. The second one is about, it takes a murder which is connected to human trafficking. Human trafficking all across the country. The murder is in Uttarakhand, but the human trafficking is all the way from Nepal to Maharashtra and maybe elsewhere too. The third book is The Dark Cloud at Noon, which is based on COVID, on my belief of fallout of the COVID measures that the various governments across the world took. So this is based in a fictional island, a monarchy island called Muktastan, and it's based on it talks about the murder of a monarch because of the measures he took during COVID to keep the people of his country safe.
Understood, ma'am. So now, coming to your latest book, I want to really ask this question: that how is this particular book, the 4th book of Ravi Kumar series, is different from the first 3, and why should the readers actually go ahead and read it? I know that there are many reasons, but if you can just tell us 1 or 2 prime reasons which will really motivate everyone to go ahead and pick this book up.
This book, The Dark, or Through All That Smoke, this is the book that you're talking about, is actually based throughout COVID. So the first challenge is that it's during COVID that investigation is happening. And that is tough call with masks and social distancing and not face-to-face meeting, etc., etc. That makes it a little difficult. I had a hard time writing because I had to keep that in mind because this was based in 2020. The story is based in 2020. It talks about a very big social ill that's been there since my teenage years too, but has really become a menace nowadays, especially in India among the urban as well as the rural people. Not only youth, it's not only youth, it's actually even the young people, etc. It talks about drugs, okay? And it shows that the drug trafficking that happens across the world for a reason. Not, it has a market, yes, but sometimes the reason for having that, for creating that drug market and hooking people onto drugs is to earn the money for a particular reason, a national reason that may seem right to them, but is absolutely wrong in our books. It is interesting in that way. I'm hoping the readers will read for themselves and find out the rest.
Absolutely, I'm sure. This is a very relevant topic, ma'am. So thanks for bringing this out. Now, one question. I'd like to digress from your writing a bit. You had already mentioned that other than writing, you also teach people on public speaking. So definitely two very different arts, writing and then public speaking. How do you balance both?
I don't do it anymore, not since I started writing, because I really don't have the time. And public speaking and writing really go hand in hand, because they both are helping someone get a command of the language. Okay, in public speaking, it was the classes I used to hold were very interactive, where majority was the students actually doing various activities, debates, vagera, or picture talking, whatever. My students ranged from 13 to 63. And it was quite interesting because their outlook on a particular topic was very interesting and quite different. I learned a lot from them too. How I managed then was at that point, this was before COVID. I stopped because of COVID. And COVID was a very productive time for me when I wrote 2 books. So after that, I really haven't gone back to doing public speaking. With my music and writing and my social life and my personal life, I think there's more than I can handle at this point in time.
Great. So, ma'am, as we are almost towards the end of this interview, I'd like to ask, do you want to pass on any message for our audience? Because there are a lot of young writers also, or rather, there are a lot of enthusiastic youngsters who are aspiring to be a writer like you. So, what is your message after being a published author of 4 books and seeing the world so closely, so many dimensions? What will be your message for our audience, to the Literoma family?
It probably is a little presumptuous of me to do so, because I'm a very late bloomer. I started writing when I was almost 60, when I was really retired. But the one thing I've always kept in mind is I'm not here to show off my prowess to my readers. Okay, it's not how much I know that is important. It's how much my readers will understand and how much they will want to know. That is more important for me. So therefore, the first thing I do is I try to keep the language very, very simple. I don't want them running to the dictionary to find out what does she mean, or to the encyclopedia. Okay, what is that? It's a waste of time for both people. The second thing is you have to research your story well so that it can stand up on its own. I write crime fiction, and I don't want it to become a comedy book, a book of comic and satire. It should be one of real serious science. Yes, there are pieces of, there is, it's not so very serious. There are conversations here and there which produce a laugh, but basically it is something which is very probable. I have taken creative license and created 1 or 2 things of my own. Like, for example, in that book I talked about, the Dark Cloud at Noon, I created an instrument, in my opinion, that is going to catch hold of, that is going to nail the perpetrator. So yeah, I do things like that occasionally. But research your storyline well, what you're going to put in, so that it holds and it doesn't sound ludicrous. Most importantly, I think what is important is that one should write because you want to write. I write because it helps me learn a lot when I'm writing, and it's like telling a story to someone, or teaching someone. You have to make sure that you can get across to your student. Likewise, I must be able to get across to my readers. And so you write because you want to write, and not because you have a point to prove or because you're in comparison with someone else. The only person you compare to is yourself. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world thinks. That's it.
I think that's really thought-provoking insights, ma'am. So thank you very much for being here with us today. And it was really a great experience talking with you. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I'm sure that all our audience is going to enjoy it as well. A lot of practical insights. Thanks for putting those across. We'll definitely be looking forward to have you here once again in our channel. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Tamal. Appreciate Literoma's getting me onto to meet my readers and hopefully many prospective readers virtually. Thank you so much and have a good day.